I joke that my husband and my friends in the entertainment industry all had an intervention with me. Just, why are you leaving? But for me, it was, I had missed my son's first birthday. I'd missed Halloween. I wanted to be present and I wanted that new adventure. I was ready for something new. And so I said, let me at it. I can do this. But it is, I think, a lot of times the fear of what your partner will think if they're not supportive, what your friends and family will think. And I think a lot of times it's that shift again to know that those people may not be people who would go out on this adventure. And so they're looking at it from a place of fear for you.
Well, hi there, and welcome to Side Hustle Hero, the show that inspires action and helps you to grow your side hustle into a thriving income stream. I'm your host, Joan Posivy. Have you ever thought about leaving your job to take your side hustle full-time? But then that inner voice pops up asking, is this really a smart idea? What'll people think? If so, you're not alone. Shannon Russell gets it. In fact, she lived it. She was a successful TV producer for over 16 years before saying goodbye, not because she had to, but because she wanted to start producing her own life. In today's episode, Shannon is honest about the real fears of taking your side hustle to full-time, the financial milestones to hit before quitting your 9-to-5, how to build an effective exit strategy without burning bridges, and mindset shifts required, especially when you experience the very common identity crisis that's triggered by walking away from a long-held career. If you're wrestling with doubt or trying to figure out when to make your move, I think you'll value this conversation with the author of Start Your Second Act, How to Change Careers, Launch a Business, and Create Your Best Life, Shannon Russell. Welcome, Shannon.
Thank you for having me, Joan. I'm excited.
You made a major pivot from TV producer to entrepreneur. What was that moment when you knew it's time to make a change?
Oh, I have a very specific moment.
Okay.
I was 8 months pregnant in heels running through, I think it was a Times Square subway station in New York City, trying to get the bus to get back into New Jersey suburbs to pick up my 3-year-old from daycare. And it was just the stress of that moment. And I was like, you know what? I don't want to do this anymore. TV is just my dream. I had accomplished it. I loved everything about it. But the stress of my new life with a 3-year-old and a newborn on the way, it didn't fit. And that was the moment where everything started changing for me.
Did you have a side hustle at that time?
I did not. I didn't think I would ever leave television. That was just my dream since I was 5 years old. So I did not. But then I started trying to figure out what I could do once my little one was born.
And what was the first thing that you landed on?
I landed on a 9-to-5 job because I was grasping at straws at an ad agency near my house. And it was toxic and not creative, and women weren't given a voice. And it was, but I stayed with it to save money so that I could eventually get into entrepreneurship and produce my own life.
Right. And those temporary detours, if you want to call them, I find as long as we've got that why, it makes them tolerable enough.
Yes.
Right?
It all comes back to the why. Yep, exactly.
Until you find your sweet spot. Based on your personal experience and that of your client, what key signs should someone look for if they know they're ready to take their side hustle full time?
I think, especially if you already have that side hustle, it's so important to really ask yourself, take those moments to ask yourself, am I happy? Am I enjoying this?
Okay.
How is it financially? And look through the research that you've done. Am I serving my customers or clients well? Are they giving me that feedback that I might need? And then looking at it and saying, okay, can this be long-term? Can I do it? And then also really examining your finance. Because I often advise all of my clients is that as much as you might want to just say, I quit and walk out the door, you need to have that plan in place and make sure that you're financially able to do so. So it's putting in all those plans in place and making sure you're ready. But that's why the side hustle is so amazing, because you're working on it while you're earning that paycheck, most likely.
Right. And you're getting feedback from clients as to how viable this really is.
Yeah, it's that market research piece, right?
You mentioned financial. What do you recommend that people have before they take that leap full time?
I know a lot of gurus will say that 6 to 8 months, if not more, of a emergency fund kind of cushion.
Okay.
I think if you can look at that, if you can have that, that is great. If you can talk with a partner or family member or anyone else who might be in the decision-making process with you to really say, can we afford it? Because even though you have that side hustle, hopefully you have some money coming in, which is great. But oftentimes when you launch into a business full on, you're not making money for that first year or so. And so you're putting everything that you make back into the
Yes.
business. So that's why I love side hustles too, because you're seeing some of that income coming in. So if you can have those conversations, look at your savings, make sure you have a little bit of a safety net, and then just know that once you hit the ground running full time, you can kick things up with the current clients or your current customers and really maybe have some marketing strategies in place to really go out on more of a full-time basis.
Yeah, because you're going to have your fixed living costs, and maybe some people would even cut back on certain things to be able to plan their escape, execute it sooner. But what percentage, and this might be too specific, but what percentage of your expenses should be covered by your side hustle before taking the leap?
Ooh, that's a good question. I mean, I would say even if you can have a third covered,
Okay.
then you know you've got some coming in. And if you have that savings of whatever you feel is comfortable for you to
I see what you
use
mean.
to live
Okay.
off. But I think if you have that savings and then you have that money coming in, you're staying afloat. And I think that's important. And I think a lot of times people can think about, okay, I'm leaving my full-time job, which will just help me accelerate my business that much faster. But maybe there is a side project I can take on or a consultant role I can take on that is that little part-time job, just if I feel like I need a little something. But
Right.
I think that's always an option too. You're never fully leaving what you've done. You're taking those skills with you. But yeah, I think just having that little bit, knowing at least like 30% is coming in, and then you can accelerate. And I like to say, give yourself a timeline too. Like look at the calendar and say, I need these goals by 3 months, 6 months. And if I'm not hitting them, then I need to go back to the drawing board and figure out what's not working to make sure that you don't have to go back to your full-time job.
Right, to remind yourself of all the reasons that you left and not just remember the great parts of it, because we do that sometimes, don't we? And forget
Yes.
about the parts that were perhaps a very negative environment. How can someone build an effective exit strategy while still working 9 to 5? We touched a little bit on the financial side. Are there other components people should be looking at?
Yes, I'm big on don't burn a bridge, which I'm sure a lot of us are. That's so important, especially because you just never know, especially again, going into entrepreneurship, like you don't know where your paths may cross. So you might need your teammates or your boss to be a customer or a reference down the road. And you just never know. So you want to plan that exit strategy very, very clearly. And again, looking at that calendar and saying, how much money do I need to save before I can give my notice? And as you're planning as well is what projects do I have coming up? I don't want to leave my team in a lurch. So looking at the calendar again to see when is an okay time where I'm leaving everyone, I'm getting a chance to train that new person, make sure that I'm leaving on a really good note.
Right.
And then also figure out like that exit. Okay, so when I leave and now I have all this freedom, what am I going to do? Like, how fast am I going to accelerate it? And you can really use that time, that 30 minutes when you sit down at your desk in the morning and you're doom scrolling, you can start plotting and planning, and you can start making those marketing updates to your plan and looking at how you can acquire more customers, your lunch break, things like that. So while you're working, I think you can get things into place where you feel like you're moving. This way, when you give those 2 weeks or longer, you know you're off to the races.
And I would imagine that would be almost like a culture shock for some people if they're used to that office 9 to 5, of course, setting aside the whole pandemic era, but like more of that structured Monday to Friday in the workplace, and now they're at home. Do you find some people having difficulty making that transition?
Oh, yeah. Even though really you should be working the same amount of hours on your business, if you think about it, right? Especially in the beginning.
Yeah.
You don't want to just go shopping in the middle of the day. That was a lesson I put in place for myself when I started my first business is I'm not just off and unemployed. I'm not going to out for lunch all the time and I'm not running those errands. I am working for the set hours that I choose. And I think that's important. I have a client now who recently told me she didn't have enough time in the day, but she was going out to lunch almost every day, taking these lunch meetings. And a lunch meeting can be 2 hours. And I said, you really should look at having a Zoom coffee, like keeping that to 15, 30 minutes max so that you can fill in those hours in your day. So it's just adjusting and figuring out, I think, what works for you. And then also making sure you're communicating and talking to other people so you don't feel lonely. You can still talk to your old coworkers that you loved and you're just talking about different things.
Right. Yes. But I love that example about, I don't have enough time. Let's take a look at a little time log for yourself.
Yeah, we all need that, right? Because it is exciting when all of a sudden you don't have to go into the office and you feel like you have all these hours, but you're not retired, you're not unemployed, you've got a business to run and grow.
That's right. And speaking of which, a person maybe used to that steady paycheck, possibly benefits. How do you mentally prepare for leaving all that?
Yes, it's really looking at your finances and feeling comfortable. And no one wants to look at their finances, right? No one wants to do that. But looking and saying like, okay, can I afford it? My husband and I both worked in television and we were freelance. In television, you go project to project. We have never had benefits. And that's just the culture that we're used to by both being in the entertainment industry. And now he's still in the industry, but I'm a business owner. So for us, we've always had to account for health benefits for our family of 4. That's just been something we've always had to account for.
Right.
So things like that to look into ahead of time, just to make sure, like, can I afford it? Do I need to look for a new plan? What will this look like? And it's cutting back. It's cutting back on happy hours with friends or going out to lunch or maybe not going to that gym you've always gone to. Maybe you're going for walks outside instead. But, at least pulling back on some expenses because you're not having that steady paycheck. Right. And it's not going to be forever. It's going to be while you get this business going to a place that feels comfortable for you.
Right. It's not like we're depriving ourselves of this. I like to look at it as a trade. Whereas if I'm spending this money on, say, $100 a month on a gym membership, I'm choosing to trade that for, enjoy the outside, saving that $100, put it towards my business, like you said, because it's not forever. Because doing that, I've got that little bit more income to put towards the business, and that feels pretty good. And from that standpoint, looking at it as a trade, I'm leaving something of a lower nature to receive something of a higher nature down the road.
I love that. I love that idea of a trade. It's so true. And you can look at it in different aspects of your business too. I'm writing a book now and it's costing me money to invest in getting this book published. And so I've had to cut back on other things to make this work. And it's worth it, but it's that trade, like you mentioned. Yep.
Yeah. Plus the book is something that you have for a lifetime and there's so much that you can do with it and change people's lives. And good for you. Congratulations on that.
Thank you very much.
What was the hardest part of your transition from that corporate world to self-employed?
I think it was I know it was the mindset piece, the idea of this was something that I dreamed about doing for my entire life since I was a little girl. And I accomplished the dream of being a television producer and now I was giving it away. So it was the mindset shift and I really had to work on that career identity piece. And I ended up looking at it like, listen, I'm not going to grieve that career and that part of me because it is coming with me and I'm taking those skills and experience with me into becoming an entrepreneur. And this is just a new adventure. And as soon as I looked at it like, nope, I'm checking the box. That's like my motto, check the boxes in life. I checked the box on TV. I accomplished it. What's next? And I think when you can look at life and your work and your business and your career as what's next, it's an adventure, then it's that it eases you into it. And you know that you're taking that and you're even adding more to your business because you're taking that past experience with you.
Right.
So yeah, it was that mindset shift. It took me some time to get there, but I feel like it was a really great lesson to learn that I can now share with my clients too. And when you reframe it a little bit, it's more exciting than sad.
Right. Because you were this TV producer for the longest time. And now you're what?
Right. I was figuring it out, and it was that period of figuring it out. But once I just took that confidence back from myself, and I just said, okay, well, I'm going to build this business, and I have no choice but to make it successful.
What do you think are some other fears that come to the surface when people are making that transition?
I think it's what other people think. You automatically think like, and I did it too, everyone knows me as this. What are they going to say? And I joke that my husband and my friends in the entertainment industry all had an intervention with me. Just, why are you leaving? But for me, it was, I had missed my son's first birthday. I had missed Halloween. I wanted to be present and I wanted that new adventure. I was ready for something new. And so I said, let me at it. I can do this. But it is, I think, a lot of times the fear of what your partner will think if they're not supportive, what your friends and family will think. And I think a lot of times it's that shift again to know that those people may not be people who would go out on this adventure. And so they're looking at it from a place of fear for you.
Yes.
And sometimes if you're confident, the more confident you are, the more you research about this business, the more you know you're meant to be doing it, that will show to them. And then they'll say, okay, I feel all right now. But until you get to that part, it's a struggle.
It is. It is. And there's that fear of failure as well. And somebody asks you, so how's that cute little business going, Shannon? Right?
Don't you get that? Yeah. What is that thing you're doing again? And it just, you shrink a little inside.
When I was still in the banking industry, I had the opportunity to purchase a delicatessen. It was really a turnaround project, was what it was. I did that, and I had it as a side hustle for 1 year as I was building it up. But at the time I was thinking of buying it, I talked to a commercial lender at the time, and he told me all the reasons why it was a dumb idea. I was working at the same branch of this bank with him. We were both at the same branch. And I said, so what do you think about this, Gordon? And he's like, and he rhymed off all these reasons. I didn't know anything about food. The town didn't need another delicatessen, on and on. A year later, when I hand in my resignation, because now I've built up this business, I can leave and do it full time. He's like, you're so lucky to be able to leave this place. I didn't say anything. I was just like, yeah, it was all luck.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But what if you listen to him, right? Do you ever, I mean, not that you would have, but there might be some people who listen to that kind of advice and don't pursue their dreams.
Yeah. And hopefully when that does happen to somebody, that inner voice kind of keeps nagging at them and they'll see another opportunity come along. And at some point, hopefully they've developed enough confidence within themselves or have connected with people around them that are a little bit supportive that help them see the possibilities in that new venture, because it is exciting. And even if that thing that you go into isn't the thing that works out, that is going to create your financial freedom, you've learned so much by doing it.
And you'll never regret. And that's the big thing, right? To not have regrets and having that voice and nagging at you. And if you never try it, you'll never know.
Right. Because at one point,
I'm proud of you for doing that. That's exciting.
It was fun. You were involved in a franchise, weren't you?
I was. That was my first business out of TV. When I finally decided to enter entrepreneurship, I entered a franchise. And yeah, that was the best way for me to really learn about business because I had no business experience up until then.
Oh, okay. What industry was that? Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, it was STEM education for kids. So science, technology, engineering, and math. And my 3-year-old at the time inspired it because he would just sit quietly and build with blocks or Legos.
Okay.
And I said, oh, there's something to this. What if I can build a center to help teach kids how to think kind of outside of the box and think like engineers? And when I was researching to open my own business, I found the franchise that was already doing exactly what I wanted to do. So it was the best logical step for me.
Awesome. And like you said, with the franchise, you are paying for that playbook, assuming it's a solid franchise, to be able to learn all these things.
Oh, it was, yes. Playbook, it was the marketing materials, it was the curriculum I was teaching, it was the advice of the corporate office and all the other franchisees that we supported each other. And some are still my best friends up until this day because we talked every day, all day to support each other. So it was exactly what I needed. And I grew it to be successful in the first 2 years. So I really proved to myself that we were in the top 3 of all the franchises in that organization. And I was like, wow, I could take my television experience and build this business. What else can I build? It was exciting.
That's awesome. And that's interesting how that happens, isn't it? Suddenly you're doing things in this STEM franchise that, oh yeah, I forgot I had this skill. Like it might have been something that you used years prior that resurfaces because of these new challenges.
Yeah, there's a lot of that.
Yeah. So you're not doing that anymore then?
I luckily sold it just last year.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because I started my coaching business about 4 years into my franchise. And so I was running both. Even though I
Okay.
had a team with the franchise, I just felt like I kept being pulled into it. And I was like, while we're successful, let me try to sell. So I sold it and the business is booming and it's still going. So my baby has new parents right now to grow it.
That's awesome. So then when you had the franchise, that was your full time. And then as a side hustle, you started the coaching business.
Exactly. Yeah. And I was
Awesome.
able to be that present mom. So it really was ideal. My kids could come to classes with me. And yeah.
Fun. You
Hmm.
mentioned that during that time with the franchise, you met a lot of people. Some of them continued to be your best friends. What that triggered in me is some tips that you might want to suggest for listeners and viewers when they do transition from corporate to entrepreneur. What resources, what supports are helpful for them? The first thing that came to my mind was similar successful entrepreneurs or mentors. Maybe speak to that a little bit.
Oh, the best thing I could have done is connect with other entrepreneurs, because especially you're just starting out, you don't know what you don't know. If you have a side hustle, then you're dipping your toe into it and you're growing something.
Yeah.
But I think it's networking in your community or online. There are groups I've joined online where I've never met these people in person, but we can chat all the time, whether it's Facebook groups or LinkedIn. So really just getting out there with similar people in similar industries. And I joined like a mastermind group with other women that are both in Canada and the United States. And we talk again every day and we support each other. And if there's a problem, we come together. So I
Nice.
think finding your people, yeah, whether it's in person or online, just will help you get that success faster and with a little less stress and feeling less lonely, especially when you're working from home. If you end up, running an online business from home, it can get a little lonely.
And it doesn't have to be that 2 hour in-person lunch. It can be that half an hour Zoom call.
Exactly. That's all you need.
I had a mastermind partner, I called her. And because over the years, I've had different mastermind groups or partners for specific things. And hers was my connection with her. We were both road warriors. We were on the road as trainers for a lot of the times of the year. And so she had a specific understanding that someone else in a different industry wouldn't. So you can have connections for certain things. And then I would also caution people to not let the group or don't stick around in the group if it devolves into this negative kind of bitch session. Do you know what I mean? Negative,
Yeah.
what's wrong with the world session, because that's not helpful.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
Or if you end up, I would add to that is if you end up in a group where now you're a little bit more senior and you're giving advice more than you're getting.
Hmm.
And it's great to give advice. It's great
Yes.
to give back. But I've been in groups where, okay, I might be a little ahead of the other people and I'm spending all of my time coaching them and helping them. And when
Yes.
I ask a question, no one knows how to help me. So you want to find where you're parallel, wouldn't you say?
Yes, absolutely. That, and I love those opportunities. And you don't want to be the smartest one in the room because then you're not doing the learning as well,
Exactly.
right? And the people that I think of now who are doing incredibly well in growing their businesses, each of them have mentors who are very senior, and I mean senior in terms of their accomplishments, who have gone down the path. For example, one person I know who's starting up a whole franchise, he's the franchisor. One of his
Ooh.
mentors is a top franchise person in the country. So that top franchise person, they've made the mistakes, they've trodden that path, they can help guide you, and your growth is that much easier when it's guided like that.
I agree. And I think that makes sense. And you always want to have a coach. If you are trying to grow your business, you want to keep educating yourself and
Yeah.
learning more. And so I always say, if, to someone who's looking for a coach, make sure your coach has a coach or has a mentor, someone that they're
Mm.
leaning on too, because they're always bettering themselves. And there's always stuff to learn, especially when it comes to business.
It keeps things exciting. It keeps them fresh.
Oh, yeah.
Mm. When you transitioned from a career in television to running your own business, what was the biggest challenge that popped up that you didn't expect?
I would say, I think how long it took really to find my footing. It took me time, and there were days where I was like, nope, I'm going back to TV. This is too hard. Or I wasn't seeing the success that maybe came easily to me in that first act. In my second, it was taking longer. I was doing outreach. It was a completely different career running that business. So I think that was the hardest part, is realizing it wasn't going to be an overnight business, and I had to keep at it. And I think that's where the challenges come. You could easily close up shop and just say, okay, I tried it, but not having really given it the time it needed.
Yeah.
So that was a lot of testing in my ego, I guess you would say too, right? Of like, wow, I've had all the success over here, and it's not really flourishing yet here.
Yes.
But I have to keep at it.
Well, when you did come across those times where you felt like, oh man, maybe this wasn't one of my most brilliant ideas, maybe I should go back to TV, what kept you going? What kept you pushing through?
There's one example. It was very early on in the franchise business, and I was just feeling like there was no traction happening. And I got a call to go work at New York Fashion Week. And I said yes right away. I went the next day. I ended up working, 16-hour day.
Right.
And then on the bus or train, whichever I took back home that night, I realized that I missed dinner. My kids were already in bed. And it dawned on me, this is exactly what I didn't want. And so as much fun and how easy it was to be on set that day, it wasn't solving my problems. And it came back to my why, right? Why am I making this change? And I think that was the fire under me to just get back and make the franchise happen.
Right. That reminder of why you left in the first time.
Yeah.
You've helped many people launch businesses. What common mistakes do you see when they start focusing on their business full time?
I would say it's listening to others. Oftentimes other people give you advice and they're spouting things, or they're saying, oh, I don't think that's working. And when you listen to too many people, you don't get the advice and the direction that you necessarily need. And I've definitely had clients whose either partner wasn't supportive, or they're working with this one partner or customer and it's not a great fit and they don't know how to say goodbye. And it's just all that noise and chatter in your head. And sometimes it's just a matter of getting focused, asking yourself what feels good.
Yes.
And you making the decisions because you're the boss. You don't have to listen to anyone else now. So it's kind of like bringing them back to that centered reason again, to the why, and saying, okay, I'm building this and I'm building it the way I want. And if I stumble, I'll pick myself up, but I'm not going to listen to everyone's impact along the way, especially in the beginning.
Right. And I would add to that too, take a look at where that advice is coming from. Does this person really know what they're talking about? They may have very positive intentions, not want you to get hurt, that type of thing. But I would imagine, Shannon, if you had someone in your life that was a bit of a naysayer and they're talking to you about your book and it's a dumb idea, you're going to brush them off, versus the person who has, 3 New York Times bestsellers and they give you 3 things that you should change. You're going to consider that a little bit more. Would you agree with that?
1,000%. Yes.
Yeah.
Look who it's coming from. And the why behind why they're saying it too. Is there jealousy there? Are they trying to pull you back down? Is it an old coworker who wants you to come back because they miss you?
Right.
There could be a plethora of reasons. And you're right, not in a malicious way, but they could be selfish comments that you're getting that aren't going to help you. So that's where an outside mentor or coach or networking group can really push you a lot further, I think, than your inner circle at times.
Yes, because sometimes they have the ability to see more in you than you see in yourself, because so often we can be our own worst critics.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And we're vulnerable at that pace in
Yes.
our business. When you're first starting, you're very emotional, vulnerable, and you need to just stay in your lane and know that it's going to get better.
Absolutely. Is there anything I should have asked you, Shannon, that I haven't yet?
Ooh. I believe that when you're thinking about going full-time with your business or making any kind of a career or business change, that you need to do your research first. Because I think that research equals confidence, and that's the more you can research, because sometimes you get an idea or even want to start a side hustle. And when you actually start doing it, you realize, oh, this isn't exactly what I wanted.
Okay.
So by doing more research, maybe having conversations with others that are already doing that thing or in that field, you'll learn a little bit more. And then that's where your confidence comes to say, you know what, this is exactly what I want to do. So research equals confidence, I think, and that will push you further.
Great. What's the best way for our listeners to connect with you, Shannon?
My book comes out May 7th, and you can go to startyoursecond.act.com. I have a free second act journal there that you can download and kind of get all of your ideas down onto paper. And from there, you can link to my website and get my podcast, free resources, and ways to work with me.
Awesome. And what will the book help people do?
It's all based on my coaching. So it's my transition story, other success stories of women who have transitioned careers, started businesses, and it's really my second act strategy, I call it. So it'll be a way, if you don't work with me, this is the tool that you can use to really figure out what your second act in life is and start moving towards it.
Great. Thank you for that. If someone listening is on the fence about leaving their job, what's one piece of advice that you'd give them to move forward, maybe with a little bit more confidence?
I'd say make a list of your skills and your experience. And it can seem silly, but especially if you're, say, in midlife and you've had a career for 15, 20 years, you've got a lot of skills, accolades, accomplishments. Make a list and actually look at them, and that will give you confidence just seeing what you've done.
Yes.
And then if you're thinking about that business or that career change, whatever it is, you can see how those skills and experience will transfer over to that new role, and you'll really surprise yourself at how much your skills can bleed over there. And that just kind of lights you up and wants you to get started at that point once you start looking at that list.
I love that idea, Shannon. And I would take it another step to say, keep that list of all those things that you do bring to the table so that you can remind yourself of that for those days that maybe things aren't going quite as planned.
That's a great idea.
Thank you so much, Shannon, for your tips and insights on transitioning from side hustle to success to full-time entrepreneur, for sharing your story, and of course, for being today's Side Hustle Hero.
Thank you, Joan. This was such a great conversation. We could talk all day.
I think so. Thank you. I hope Shannon's story gave you the clarity and the courage you need to take that next step, whatever that looks like for you. She makes a lot of great points, but the three main takeaways that I grabbed were, number one, plan your exit strategically. Don't just quit your job on a whim. Build your side hustle while you're still earning a paycheck. Assess your finances, including cash flow to meet your expenses, and have a safety net in place. Number two, mindset is everything. One of the hardest parts of transitioning is shifting your identity and letting go of how others may perceive you. And remember, you're not leaving your experience behind, you're carrying it with you into something new. And number three, find support and tune out the noise. Not everyone will understand your decision, and some may project their own fears onto you. Surround yourself with mentors and peers and people who've walked the path to help you stay confident and focused. And whether you're still in the research mode or already mapping out your exit plan, remember, your second act is yours to define. Well, that's a wrap for today. If our chats are sparking your entrepreneurial spirit and providing valuable insights, consider showing your support by visiting sidehustlehero.com/support. That's where you can shoot me a virtual coffee. It's a real thing and a fun way to give the show a caffeinated thumbs up. Thank you so much. And if you enjoyed this episode, share it with a friend who's dreaming about making a change. And be sure to check out the episode description where you'll find a link to the full show notes, which live at our website, sidehustlehero.com, as well as a link to Shannon's website and her free resources. And if you're enjoying what you're seeing in this podcast, it would be so appreciated if you would take a moment and add your comment, share the episode, and please subscribe. It'll let others know that there's valuable content here to help them start or grow their side hustle. Thanks for watching, and hustle on.